Welcome back to this year's Fright Night Special. Last year, the world ended, not with a whimper, but with a profound, terrifying silence. The horror was immediate and total. The erasure of man was upon us. People was vanishing everywhere. You couldn't walk on the streets without the constant fear that you or someone you love would simply cease to exist. We were gripped by a terror so absolute that the only sound louder than the silence was the sound of our own heart pounding in the dark. We watched as Saxonville Creek became ground zero, where the horror started. We saw the rickety old man, the creature of the night, bitter and twisted by the contentious election, emerge from the shadows. He started by claiming the targets he promised, the criminals, the othered, the ones he'd called the usual suspects. But here's where the real terror began. His hunger was unnatural and all devouring. It wasn't about control, it was about pure consumption. His appetite quickly grew beyond his promised targets, turning instead to devour the very pillars of the community. The respected teachers, the beloved grandmothers, the young children, people who were neither black nor brown nor associated with any crime. The fear became real because everyone realized that once the system of erasure was started, no one was safe. But amidst the chaos, a chilling pattern emerged, a truth that was harder to see than the sudden disappearances. His true malignant target was one's vanishing first and fastest were the brown and black people. He was desperately searching for answers. The truth pulled us back to the first night and the incredible bravery of the two souls who dared to dig deeper. You remember the story. Angela and Roland, blessed their bravery, found the source, an ancient oak tree, its roots twisted around a dark, oily portal in the heart of the woods. The rickety old man stood there, ready to drag our entire town into that void. But do you remember the miracle? Just as darkness was about to consume them, a light, a celestial figure in blinding white, their voice like thunder, shouting the defiant truth that echoed through the ages. We are not going back. The man was banished back into the abysmal darkness, and the missing returned unharmed. Saxonville Creek was saved, but the night didn't end with relief. We were left with a terrible, chilling premonition. The darkness was not killed, it was only covered up, and the cover up only bought us 2 months. 2 months. That's all the time we bought. For 2 months, the celestial light kept the shadows at bay. The missing were home. They were whole, but they were silent. They couldn't remember what had happened. They only remembered a deep, nagging hunger, not for food, but for belonging. Saxonville tried to heal. There was a temporary return of what we call typical respect. People smiled at Miss Rodriguez again. The school clerk called the children by their correct names, but the town felt like a deep, festering wound that had only scabbed over, hiding the malignancy that was still raging underneath. Everyone talked about the miracle, but nobody wanted to look under the rug where the old man had been swept. This fear didn't vanish, it lingered. It became a constant reminder of the ugliness that lurked beneath the surface. And as the initial shock wore off, the town realized the terrifying truth. The celestial light had banished the monster, but its power stopped right at the edges of the woods. It didn't reach the dusty basements of the city archives or the sterile offices of the municipal budget boards. The system, the machine the old man had corrupted, had never stopped running. Slowly, covertly, the old problems crept back. Small cuts, a sudden delay on medication delivery, a form needing a new, impossible signature. People began to feel the first vanishing again, the loss of respect. You existed, but you were an inconvenience. 2 months to the day of the banishment, the darkness returned with a vengeance. It didn't emerge as a terrifying creature in the dark. It came as a memo. It came as a new set of budget cuts. It came as a bureaucratic indifference weaponized. The rickety old man knew he couldn't beat the light in a direct fight. So he went to work underground, not to possess souls, but to possess the system. And that's where he found his new apostles, the Crimson Collectors. Not mighty demons, but small, petty, conflicted figures. They were the ones who filtered the rickety old man's malignant views, turning his venomous rage into official mandates and cruel bureaucratic actions. They were the ones in the gray cubicles, the one with the power to change a date on a form or deny a claim with a silent keystroke. They were the ones who didn't burn with unnatural light, but who smiled with an unnatural calm. They did the bidding of the underground. This time, the vanishing was not an evaporation, it was an institutional strangulation. The brown people started going missing again, but now it was a slow death. The first cruel move was to dismantle our memory. They began to take our ability to remember and teach history. Suddenly, the textbooks were blank pages. Or worse, they told a cheerful, sanitized lie. Teachers who resisted found their pensions frozen. Libraries were audited and collections deemed inefficient. If you can't remember the past, you can't recognize the present horror. You forget that the darkness was ever banished at all. This was the rickety old man's mastery. He didn't need the dark portal anymore. He had the power of erasure working in the broad daylight. Then came the hunger. They started making it hard for people to eat. The local community gardens were rezoned overnight and turned into commercial parking lots. Food assistance programs were tangled in so much red tape, the application expired before they could be processed. The grocery store shelves for certain neighborhoods, they were truly understocked. They stood perpetually barren, a landscape of chrome and dust. And if you were lucky enough to find something, it was the poison. Endless rows of artificial fillers, processed sugars, and genetically modified foods, products designed not to nourish but to slowly and surely kill. This was the dark message screamed in every empty aisle, a profound, deliberate disregard for Black and brown bodies. In the upper class districts, the organic produce still gleamed. Here, we only have foods that ensured our decline. The market didn't disappear. The access to life-giving sustenance did. The Crimson Collectors ensured that the only thing brown people in Saxonville Creek could easily access was the deep, corrosive feeling of chronic hopelessness. But the final, most terrifying tactic was the attack on life itself. They targeted healthcare. Clinics in the neighborhoods that had fought back the hardest suddenly lost funding due to infrastructural noncompliance. Appointments were lost. Essential medications became impossible and too expensive to purchase. People began dying. Their deaths weren't the result of the rickety old man's dark magic or a direct curse, but the constant and sheer neglect. It was a consequence of their bidding. From untreated infections, from a failure to thrive, from the crushing weight of homelessness as affordable housing evaporated, and from the cold, slow logic of a system designed for their total failure. You couldn't lock the darkness back up because the darkness was no longer a ghost. It was the policy, it was the budget spreadsheet. And because the ability to remember history had been taken, the community couldn't connect the dying in the hospital to the missing in the archives. The vanishing had become complete. From one town to the next, it expanded. Riverbend, Blackwood Heights, and now our own streets. The beautiful, diverse tapestry of our world is being systematically bleached, not by fire, but by paperwork. The power of erasure is absolute. I'm broadcasting from my basement, and I know that this is what makes the story so terrifying because it's not fiction. This is the truth we're living in right now. The rickety old man, his crimson collectors, and the underground of systematic malice have sold the vast majority of us a cheap, poisonous lie. The lie that is empty, cold, starving existence is inevitable. That we should all just settle into a hell that was engineered by us. The hell of no food, no health care, no history, and no hope. But if you are still listening, you haven't sold your souls yet. You haven't chosen to live in hell. We must face this ugliness together. And this is where the story turns real life. We must choose light. We must choose love. We must look at the power of erasure in its cold, dead eyes and tell it what the celestial figure screamed out last Halloween. We are not going back. Find the people who remember the truth and pass it on, not through loud protests or by open channels. Remember, they control the narrative and the lie they call the truth. Pass it on silently and quietly from neighbor to neighbor, from mother to child, from grandparent to great grandchild. Every shared recipe, every whispered story of struggle, every correct name taught, it's all a nail hammered in the coffin of their lies. Keep the truth alive. Keep the history warm. Keep hope burning because we are not just sweeping the darkness under the rug this time. We are waiting. We are remembering. We are gathering the strength. And when the time comes, we will not banish the evil that is lurking. We will destroy it.